Ever been made to feel like a walking ATM by someone you loved? My stunning fiancée, Bella, called me her clueless provider and sugar daddy with no looks behind my back. Little did she know, I heard everything. Instead of just dumping her, I played the long game. For months, I secretly used her own contacts and her arrogance against her, funneling opportunities to my genuinely talented and broke cousin, Irene, all while Bella's own modeling career mysteriously stalled. This isn't just a story about revenge, it's about waking up from a narcissistic abuse cycle, recognizing the insidious effects of gaslighting and codependency, and finally learning to build boundaries. Watch as I navigate Bella's manipulative tactics, her hysterical meltdowns, and her desperate attempts to reclaim her provider when the truth comes out. From whispered insults to public confrontations, this is my journey from being a clueless fiancé to taking back my power and my bank account. If you've ever dealt with a narcissist, a user, or someone who made you question your own worth, this story is for you. Get ready for drama, plot twists, and the ultimate satisfying takedown. The fluorescent lights of the hospital waiting room in downtown Austin always seemed to hum with a particular kind of anxiety, a low thrum that mirrored the knot in my stomach. I'm Alex, by the way. At the time of this whole saga, I was 29, a lead software architect for a fairly successful biotech startup. I made good money, enough to live comfortably in a decent condo in Zilker, but I was, and still am, an objectively average-looking guy. Think friendly yet support rather than GQ cover model. My idea of a wild Friday night was usually debugging code with a craft beer, not schmoozing at some A-list party. Then there was Bella. Bella, 25, was the human equivalent of a supernova. She wasn't just beautiful, she was aggressively stunning. The kind of woman who turned heads, stopped traffic, and made you question your own eyesight. Long raven hair that cascaded down her back, eyes like emeralds, and a figure that seemed sculpted by a Renaissance master. She was an aspiring model, and aspiring was the keyword she used to explain why her finances were perpetually aspirational. We met through a mutual acquaintance at a SexFW Interactive panel afterparty. I was there for the tech. She was there, I later realized, for the networking, or more accurately, for scouting potential benefactors. I was so out of my depth it was comical. For the first few months, I genuinely couldn't believe my luck. My buddies, especially Dave, my cynical college roommate, were floored. "Alex, are you sure she's not a highly advanced AI designed to extract your savings?" He'd joke, only half kidding. I just laugh it off. I was smitten, utterly and completely. This was pure codependency in its early stages. My self-esteem got a ridiculous boost just by being seen with her. Looks aren't everything, people say, and they're right. But when you're an average guy and you're suddenly with someone who looks like Bella, it does a weird number on your psyche. It felt precarious, like I was constantly on probation, needing to prove I was worthy of her orbit. About 6 months in, Bella started dropping hints about marriage. They were subtle at first, a wistful sigh over a friend's engagement ring on Instagram, a comment about how secure it must feel to be married. I was already head over heels, convinced this was the real deal. So 7 months after we started dating, during a romantic getaway to a boutique hotel in Fredericksburg, her choice my expense, I proposed. She said yes immediately, tears, which I now suspect were more performative than heartfelt, glistening in her emerald eyes. My family, particularly my older sister Clara, a no-nonsense lawyer in Houston, was skeptical. "Alex, it's awfully fast, isn't it?" Clara had said, her voice carefully neutral over the phone. "She's very striking. Does she, contribute much to the household finances?" I brushed it off. "She's just starting out, Clara. The modeling world is tough. She needs support." Oh, the naivety. We were, I thought, relatively happy. We had our ups and downs, sure, but I genuinely believed the love we had, or at least, the love I had for her, was real. Then, about 3 months before the wedding, the incident happened. Bella had invited her 2 closest friends, Tiffany and Crystal, women who were essentially less polished, slightly more overtly avaricious versions of Bella, over to our condo to help with wedding planning. I'd been battling a particularly nasty bout of cedar fever that day, the kind that makes you want to claw your eyes out, and had retreated to the bedroom with a box of tissues and a bottle of antihistamines, hoping to nap it off. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. I was drifting in that hazy state between wakefulness and sleep, when their voices, initially a low murmur from the living room, sharpened with a clarity that cut through my allergy-induced fog. "Honestly, Tiff," Bella was saying, her voice laced with a dismissive amusement I'd never heard directed at me. "He's sweet, in a puppy dog kind of way, but thank God for my clueless provider. He'd probably buy me a unicorn if I fluttered my eyelashes enough." A snort of laughter from Tiffany. "Girl, you hit the jackpot. A sugar daddy with no looks but a decent paycheck. And he actually thinks this is love? You deserve an Emmy for this performance, Bella." Crystal chimed in, her voice dripping with condescension. "Seriously, how does he not see it? He's so earnest. It's almost painful to watch him try so hard. But hey, as long as he keeps footing the bill for this lifestyle." I could practically hear her gesturing around my condo, the one I paid the mortgage on. My blood ran cold, then hot, then ice cold again. Clueless provider? Sugar daddy with no looks? Every word was a poisoned dart. They went on, dissecting my perceived insecurities, my average appearance, my apparent gullibility. Bella was the ringleader, her jokes the cruelest, painting me as a slightly pathetic but ultimately useful tool for her ambitions. "He's just so grateful someone who looks like me even gives him the time of day," she'd said with a sigh that sounded almost bored. "It's basically a full-time job managing his expectations and keeping him happy enough to keep the Amex flowing. But a girl's gotta survive in Austin, and modeling gigs for ethereal brunettes don't just fall out of the sky, you know?" The betrayal was a physical blow. It wasn't just the insults. It was the casual, calculated cruelty, the utter contempt underlying every expensive dinner I'd paid for, every bill I'd covered, every time I'd listened patiently to her struggles as an aspiring model. I lay there, paralyzed by a mixture of rage and a profound, sickening disillusionment. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a fundamental truth about her character, a deep-seated narcissism that viewed others merely as instruments for her gratification. I wanted to storm out there, to confront them, to unleash the torrent of fury building inside me. But a strange, almost preternatural calm descended. Dumping her on the spot would be momentarily satisfying, but it felt insufficient. This level of deception, this profound betrayal, demanded a more nuanced response. She thought I was clueless? Fine. I'd be the most devoted, attentive, clueless provider she'd ever had the misfortune of underestimating. My insides were on fire, but my mind was already working. A cold, methodical plan beginning to take shape. Bella was a web developer's nightmare, all surface gloss and no back-end substance. I, on the other hand, knew how to build things, and, as it turned out, how to dismantle them. Bella was, as she often reminded me, just starting out. She didn't get paid much for her sporadic gigs, certainly not enough to afford the lifestyle she craved. The designer clothes, the expensive makeup, the Ubers to endless auditions, the rent on our shared condo, which she'd moved into a mere 2 months after we started dating, citing a sudden roommate emergency and a lack of funds for her own place. It was supposed to be temporary. It never was. Her parents weren't wealthy. They ran a small hardware store in a dusty West Texas town. So she relied on me, heavily. She wasn't entirely wrong about the sugar daddy part, even if I was only a few years older. The dynamic was clear. I provided, she existed beautifully. After her friends left, their laughter echoing mockingly in my memory, I went back to my room, not to sleep but to think. Breaking up with her was the obvious, rational choice. But the rage, the feeling of being so thoroughly played, so profoundly disrespected, screamed for something more. Then I remembered Irene. My cousin Irene, 23, living in Dallas, was also an aspiring model. Unlike Bella, Irene was the real deal, genuinely passionate, hardworking, and with a unique, edgy look that photographers were starting to notice. The problem? Irene was loaded, or rather, her father was, a hugely successful oil and gas tycoon. But her dad, my Uncle Ray, was old school. He didn't approve of Irene's modeling ambitions, viewing it as frivolous and not a real career. He'd cut off her allowance, telling her she could pursue her dreams if she could fund them herself. So Irene, despite her family's wealth, was struggling, trying to make a name for herself on a shoestring budget, crashing on friends' couches, and taking any gig she could get. She had the drive, the talent, and the family credit card, which she refused to use for her career out of pride and a desire to prove her father wrong. But she lacked industry contacts and the know-how to navigate the cutthroat Dallas modeling scene. Bella, on the other hand, despite her limited success, had accumulated a surprisingly decent list of contacts through sheer persistence and her willingness to attend every industry event, no matter how tedious. A plan, cold and intricate, began to crystallize. Bella was so convinced of her own brilliance and my supposed naivety that she'd never see it coming. The next morning, I was the epitome of the doting, slightly clueless fiancé, my allergy symptoms conveniently masking any lingering redness in my eyes. "Morning, sunshine," I said, pecking Bella on the cheek as she scrolled through Instagram, already in her expensive silk robe. "Feeling better?" she asked, barely looking up. "Much," I lied. "So what's the wedding planning crisis of the day?" She launched into a detailed account of the debate between ivory and champagne-colored napkins, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath my placid surface. My first move was to gain access to Bella's network. She was notoriously protective of her contacts, viewing them as her primary assets. But she was also incredibly disorganized, her life a chaotic whirlwind of auditions, social events, and online shopping. Her laptop, often left open on the kitchen counter, became my primary target. Under the guise of just needing to check a quick email or my own machine is acting up, I started meticulously copying her contact lists, her audition schedules, notes she jotted down about photographers, casting agents, and boutique owners in both Austin and Dallas. It was a treasure trove of information, hoarded by someone who didn't fully appreciate its potential beyond her own immediate needs. Then I called Irene. "Alex, hey, what's up, cuz?" Irene's voice was characteristically upbeat, despite the background noise of what sounded like a bustling coffee shop where she was probably working her part-time barista job. "Irene, got a proposition for you. A bit unconventional," I began. I explained that I'd come across some potentially useful contacts in the Dallas modeling scene and thought of her. I was careful not to reveal the full extent of Bella's betrayal or my motives. This was about empowering Irene, not burdening her with my drama. "Here's the deal. I can feed you some very specific, very timely leads for auditions, photographers looking for new faces, designers needing runway models for local shows. If you book anything through a lead I give you, you send me, let's say 50% of whatever you make from that specific gig." There was a stunned silence on the other end. 50%? "Alex, that's steep. But if these are real leads, why are you doing this?" "Let's just say I'm looking to make a strategic investment in emerging talent," I said, trying to sound like a savvy businessman. "And I believe in you, Irene. You've got the look, the drive. But this is strictly business, okay? No family discounts, okay? This is a commission-based partnership. I needed her to see this as a professional arrangement, not a handout. It was crucial for my plan and for her own sense of accomplishment. Plus, her sending me a whopping $15,500, as in the original story, due to her anger at her dad, would be a delicious cherry on top. If she wanted to teach her dad a lesson and I profited, all the better. "Deal," she said, a new determination in her voice. "If you can get me in the door, Alex, I'll kick it down, and you'll get your 50%. This could be huge." "Oh, it will be," I murmured, a grim smile playing on my lips. Bella has been very diligent in her networking. And so, my double life began. By day, I was Alex, the devoted, slightly overwhelmed fiancé, listening patiently to Bella's wedding anxieties and her complaints about the unfairness of the modeling industry. By night, and during stolen moments on my lunch break, I was Irene's secret agent. Bella would mention an upcoming casting call in Dallas she was thinking about or a new Austin-based designer she was trying to impress. I'd absorb the details, then discreetly pass them on to Irene with specific instructions. "Okay, Echelon Agency in Dallas is holding an open call for runway models, Thursday, 10 a.m. They're looking for strong, unconventional beauty. Mention you were referred by an anonymous industry insider who saw your potential. Wear that black asymmetrical dress, and for God's sake, be on time." The beauty of it was Bella's own narcissism and her ingrained belief in my cluelessness. She'd complain, "Ugh, can you believe it? I just heard about this amazing casting in Dallas. But it was yesterday. How did these things slip by me? Or that new photographer I wanted to work with. Apparently he just signed some unknown girl from Dallas who looks vaguely like me but edgier. So frustrating." I'd nod sympathetically. "The industry is brutal, honey. Your time will come. Inside, I'd be checking my burner phone where Irene would have just texted, "Alex, booked a runway show. They loved me. 50% en route. You're a genius. Dad is going to have a fit when he sees me in the newspaper." Sometimes she'd add, "Just sent you $1,500. Dad's still being a jerk about funding, so this is my way of flipping him the bird and funding myself. Thanks for being my silent partner in rebellion." The cash, sent via untraceable methods, began to accumulate in a new secret bank account. My feelings for Bella had curdled into a strange, detached fascination. The love was dead, replaced by a kind of anthropological curiosity. I was observing a predator in her natural habitat, noting her manipulative tactics, her shallow emotional range, her absolute conviction in her own superiority. The trauma bond that had made me feel so dependent on her approval was being systematically dismantled, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I was also, very consciously, beginning the process of boundary formation, even if those boundaries were, for now, invisible to her. This went on for a couple of months. Irene's career started to gain serious traction. She was booking more and more gigs, her confidence soaring. Bella, on the other hand, was hitting a dry spell. Her auditions were mysteriously unproductive. The photographers she wanted to work with were suddenly too busy. She grew increasingly irritable, her complaints about the industry louder and more frequent. She never once suspected that her clueless provider was actively, methodically, rerouting her destiny. The wedding was fast approaching. Invitations needed to be ordered, deposits paid, vendors booked. Bella was in a frenzy of planning, blissfully unaware that I was agreeing to everything while doing absolutely nothing. One evening, Bella was scrolling through Instagram, a frown marring her perfect features. "Ugh, look at this Irene girl. She's everywhere in the Dallas scene suddenly. She even got signed to that agency I was trying to get into. How does that even happen? Nepotism probably. Some rich daddy pulling strings." I looked over her shoulder at the picture of Irene, looking fierce and fantastic on a local magazine cover. "She's got a strong look," I commented mildly. "Maybe she's just good." Bella scoffed. "Good? Please. In this industry, it's all about who you know, or who you know." She gave me a pointed look, one I now understood as a transactional assessment. A week later, the invitations were supposed to be mailed. Irene called me, her voice ecstatic. "Alex, you are not going to believe this. That agency, they just booked me for a national campaign. A national campaign, and Dad actually called. He saw my magazine cover. He said he was proud. He sent me $5,000 just because." That same evening, Bella cornered me. "Alex, the invitations. Have they been sent? People are starting to text me. This is getting embarrassing." I looked at her, at the beautiful, hollow woman who had so casually, so cruelly dismissed me. A slow, deliberate smile spread across my face. "Actually, Bella," I said, my voice calm, almost gentle. "There's been a slight change of plans regarding the wedding." Her eyes narrowed. "A change of plans? What the hell are you talking about? Showtime." Bella's eyes narrowed, the emeralds hardening into chips of green ice. "A change of plans? What the hell are you talking about, Alex?" she demanded, her voice losing its usual purr and taking on the sharp, impatient edge she usually reserved for slow baristas or Uber drivers who missed a turn. I leaned back against the cool granite of the kitchen island, the one she'd insisted we upgrade, crossing my arms. "Well, Bella," I began, my tone deliberately even. "For starters, there are no invitations to be mailed because no invitations were ever ordered. There's no calligrapher meticulously addressing envelopes because, alas, no calligrapher was hired. And that rather hefty deposit for the enchanting rustic chic venue out in Dripping Springs, still safely in my bank account." I paused, letting each revelation land, watching the confident smirk on her face falter, replaced by a flicker of confusion, then a dawning, incredulous anger. "In fact, Bella, there is no wedding. At all." She stared at me, her perfectly shaped lips parting slightly. A strangled laugh escaped her. "Is this some kind of sick joke, Alex? Because if it is, it's not remotely funny. You've been letting me plan this whole thing, stress over every detail." "Oh, I agree. Some jokes aren't funny," I cut in, my voice losing its deceptive mildness and taking on a steely quality I hadn't realized I possessed. "For instance, the one about your clueless provider? The one who's a sugar daddy with no looks but, thankfully, a decent paycheck?" Or how about the one where you deserve an Emmy for pretending to be in love with me? Those particular jokes, overheard while I was supposedly incapacitated by cedar fever a few months back, weren't funny at all, Bella. In fact, they were quite illuminating. The color drained from her face so fast she looked like a marble statue. Her hand, which had been gesturing emphatically, froze mid-air. The transformation was extraordinary. The imperious, radiant model was gone, replaced by a trapped, cornered creature. This was the narcissistic injury hitting its mark, her meticulously crafted facade of superiority, and her unshakable belief in my utter gullibility had just been publicly, or at least privately for now, demolished. I have no idea what you're talking about, she stammered, her eyes darting around the kitchen as if seeking an escape route or an ally. Classic, predictable denial. Oh, I think you do, I pressed, my voice still low but now infused with the Arctic chill that had settled in my soul that day. I heard every single solitary word, Bella. You, Tiffany Crystal. It was quite the performance. A masterclass in ridicule and contempt. You truly have a talent for kicking a man when he's down, especially when he's battling a sinus infection and running a fever. Alex, you must have misheard, she insisted, her voice rising, a distinct tremor of panic threading through it. We were just being silly, gossiping. You know how girls are. It didn't mean anything. It was just stupid, harmless banter. The gaslighting was in full swing now, a desperate attempt to make me doubt my own ears, to rewrite her venomous words as something innocuous. Harmless banter, I echoed, and a laugh, harsh and devoid of any humor, ripped from my chest. Calling the man you're about to marry, the man who pays for your rent, your clothes, your food, your Ubers, your very existence in this city, your clueless provider. That's harmless banter to you, Bella? Bella? Systematically mocking every insecurity you knew I had because I, like an idiot, actually confided in you. That's just how girls are. I pushed myself off the island, the confined space of the kitchen suddenly feeling suffocating. You weren't just gossiping, Bella. You were gloating. You were reveling in your perceived cleverness, in how thoroughly you believed you had me fooled, how you were managing me. Tears, predictably, welled in her emerald eyes. Whether they were genuine tears of remorse, or just another tool in her manipulative arsenal, I couldn't be sure, nor did I particularly care at this point. Alex, please. I was an idiot. I was cruel, I know. I didn't mean it. Not really. I didn't mean it. Not really. I love you. You have to know I love you. She reached for my arm, her touch, which once sent shivers of pleasure down my spine, now felt like the caress of a viper. I recoiled as if burned. Love, I scoffed, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. You don't have the first clue what love is, Bella. You understand transactions. You understand leverage. You understand how to use people until they're all used up. And you used me. You preyed on my affection, my generosity, my idiotic hope that someone as dazzling as you could genuinely love someone as ordinary as me. The admission was raw, exposing a core vulnerability, but it needed to be voiced. My past codependency had painted a giant target on my back. So what? She shrieked, her voice cracking, the carefully constructed victimhood starting to crumble, revealing the raw, entitled fury beneath. You've just been pretending all this time? Leading me on? Letting me plan this entire wedding, tell all my friends, my family, just to do this to me? To humiliate me? Not humiliation, Bella. Education, I corrected, a grim, almost predatory satisfaction coiling in my gut. You labeled me clueless. I simply decided to embrace the role you assigned me. And while you were agonizing over the font for the non-existent wedding programs, I was busy with my own projects. Her eyes narrowed again, suspicion warring with disbelief. Busy doing what, Alex? What could you possibly have been doing? The condescension was still there even now. Well, for one, I was meticulously not booking anything for our elaborate, imaginary wedding. But more productively, I paused for dramatic effect, savoring the moment. I was busy helping someone who actually possesses talent and deserves a shot. My cousin Irene? The one from Dallas you probably wouldn't deign to acknowledge in a police lineup? Bella looked utterly blank. Your cousin? The very same, I confirmed. You see, Bella, all those precious contacts you so jealously guarded? All those names you'd casually drop to impress people. Photographers, agents, boutique owners, casting directors. Turns out they're quite valuable when placed in the right hands. I started redirecting some of that information to Irene. And a funny thing happened, Bella. When genuine talent meets genuine opportunity, careers don't just aspire, they ignite. I allowed myself a small cold smile. Irene just signed with a major modeling agency in Dallas. She recently shot a national campaign. And the delightful irony? A significant number of her initial crucial breakthroughs came from leads I gleaned directly from your meticulously curated network. And for every single gig she booked through my referrals, she paid me a handsome 50% finder's fee. So in a way, your clueless provider was diversifying his portfolio. Just not in you, my dear. I even added with a saccharine sweetness that I knew would infuriate her. Sometimes she'd even send me a whopping $1,500 from a single gig, just because she was mad at her dad for not supporting her dreams. It was her way of teaching him a lesson while funding herself. I was just the happy, passive recipient of her familial frustration, and my bank account thanks you both. The cascade of emotions on Bella's face was a sight to behold: stunned disbelief, white-hot rage, a dawning, sickening comprehension, and then a flicker of something that might have been fear. It was as if I just calmly explained how I'd rewired the entire universe while she was picking out canapes. You use me, she whispered, her voice hoarse, incredulous. I prefer to think of it as strategic resource reallocation, I replied smoothly. You use me for my financial stability and my emotional devotion, viewing me as a means to an end. I merely used your professional contacts and your staggering arrogance to uplift someone I genuinely care about, and, yes, to recoup a not insignificant portion of my rather extensive investment in the Bella Devereaux lifestyle brand. You were so utterly convinced of your own intellectual and aesthetic superiority, so dismissive of my intelligence, that the possibility of me orchestrating something like this never even crossed your exquisitely self-absorbed mind. She sank onto one of the ridiculously expensive bar stools she'd insisted on, the fight visibly draining out of her, replaced by a hollow-eyed shock. This is monstrous, Alex. A psychopath, Alex? A psychopath? I tilted my head, considering the accusation. Am I? Or am I simply someone who finally grew tired of being treated like an animated wallet with inconvenient feelings? You authored this narrative, Bella. Your duplicity, your contempt, your profound lack of empathy, these are the seeds you sowed. This, I gestured around the kitchen, our kitchen, her expensive espresso machine gleaming mockingly under the recessed lighting, is merely the harvest. I then delivered the line I'd been rehearsing in my head for months. You often talked about how you were living the dream on my dime. Well, darling, consider this your wake-up call. The dream is officially over. The sobs started then, not the delicate, camera-ready tears I was accustomed to, but ugly, gasping, convulsive sobs that racked her body. It was the sound of a queen bee being dethroned, of an entitled princess realizing the royal treasury was empty. What am I supposed to do? She wailed, mascara beginning to streak down her usually flawless cheeks. Where am I supposed to go? The learned helplessness she'd so expertly cultivated, always relying on me to solve her problems, was now on full pathetic display. Or perhaps it was just another calculated ploy for sympathy, an attempt to guilt me into a reprieve. That, Bella, I said, my voice devoid of any lingering warmth, any flicker of the affection I once felt, is, as they say in the business world, no longer within my purview. You have until the end of this week, let's say Sunday at noon, to pack your designer suitcases, your myriad of beauty products, and your charmingly self-serving personality, and vacate my premises. Consider the past year's worth of rent, utilities, organic groceries, Ubers to nowhere gigs, acting classes that led to nothing, and the small mountain of clothes and accessories my decent paycheck funded as your severance package, a golden parachute from the clueless provider corporation, if you will. She looked up, her tear-streaked face contorted with a rage that was almost primal. The beautiful mask was gone, revealing the grasping, venomous creature beneath. You will regret this, Alex. Mark my words. You will never find anyone as beautiful, as exciting as me. That, Bella, I said softly, a profound sense of peace settling over me, is precisely the goddamn plan. She was gone by Saturday evening, a day earlier than my deadline, leaving in a whirlwind of slammed doors, muttered curses, and a trail of discarded, and probably very expensive, tissue boxes. I didn't lift a finger to help her pack. I didn't offer a single word of comfort or conciliation. I just sat in the living room, sipping a glass of bourbon I suddenly felt I'd earned, and listened to the sounds of her departure. The apartment felt instantly, palpably lighter, as if a malevolent spirit had finally been exorcised. The lingering scent of her signature jasmine and sandalwood perfume was the only ghostly reminder of her presence, and I knew a good airing out would soon take care of that. Barely 3 days after Bella's dramatic exit, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My stomach clenched. I knew with a weary certainty who it would be. "Alex, it's Bella, my angel. I've been doing nothing but crying since I left. I was a fool, a horrible, stupid fool. I know I hurt you, betrayed you. But please, you have to believe me. Those things I said, they weren't the real me. I was scared, insecure. I miss you so much it physically hurts. I still love you, Alex, more than words can say. Can we please talk? I'm willing to do anything to earn back your trust, to make this right. I can't imagine my life without my rock, my everything." I stared at the message, a cold amusement washing over me. The hoovering phase of the narcissistic abuse cycle was right on schedule. The desperate attempt to suck me back into her vortex of drama and dysfunction. For a nanosecond, a ghost of the old Alex, the one who had been so thoroughly conditioned by the trauma bond to crave her validation, felt a flicker of something, pity, residual affection. Then another text pinged through, this one from a number I did recognize, Tiffany, one of Bella's erstwhile best friends. "Alex, it's Tiffany. Listen, I know I was a total cow during that conversation, and I am beyond sorry. No excuse for my behavior, but I felt you needed to see this. Bella just sent this to our group chat." Below her message was a screenshot. A screenshot of Bella's text to their group. "Okay girls, phase 1 of operation, get back in the condo is launched." Sent the tearful, "I miss my rock" text. "He's such a sentimental simp. He'll cave in a week, tops. Just need a place to crash until he begs me to come back or I find a new guy with a fatter wallet. His Zilker condo is way too convenient to give up without a fight. Plus I left my good Chanel boots there. Wish me luck, bitches." #user for life #has still loves Metho. I read Tiffany's text and the attached screenshot twice. The last vestige of any misplaced sympathy, any lingering doubt about the correctness of my actions, evaporated like morning mist under the Texas sun. This wasn't just run-of-the-mill narcissism. This was a breathtaking, almost sociopathic level of calculated deceit and entitlement. She truly saw other human beings as interchangeable resources, to be manipulated and discarded at will. I typed a quick, "Thank you, Tiffany. You have no idea how much I appreciate this. You're a better friend to me than you were to her apparently." And then, without a moment's hesitation, I blocked Bella's new number. I went through my phone, my social media, and meticulously blocked her on every conceivable platform. I was building my boundaries, not with bricks and mortar, but with resolute, digital finality. My friends, when I finally recounted the entire sordid tale, sparing no detail of my counteroffensive, were a potent cocktail of shocked, impressed, and mildly concerned for my mental state. Dave just kept shaking his head, a slow grin spreading across his face. "Dude," he said, "you didn't just dodge a bullet. You caught the bullet, melted it down, and forged it into a Medal of Honor. A slightly terrifying, but undeniably awesome, Medal of Honor." About a week later, another text from another new number. Bella was nothing if not persistent. "Alex, you think you're so clever, don't you? Blocking me won't make your disgusting behavior disappear. You used my contacts, my hard work, to benefit your pathetic cousin. That's exploitation. If you don't agree to let me move back in, just until I find a new place, I swear, I will tell everyone. I'll go to the agencies, the photographers, the designers. I'll expose you for the manipulative leech you are. Your precious Irene's fledgling career will be doa. Think very carefully, Alex. You don't want to mess with me." I actually laughed. A genuine, hearty laugh. Blackmail? Seriously? She was still dramatically underestimating me. Did she honestly believe I hadn't anticipated this pathetic maneuver? I typed my reply with relish, "Gay dearest Bella, your audacity is, as ever, a marvel to behold. Please, I implore you, do tell everyone. Scream it from the rooftops of the W Hotel if you wish. Tell them the whole story. Be sure to include the charming anecdotes about your clueless provider and your sugar daddy with no looks. Don't forget to mention how you were managing me and living the dream on my dime while secretly holding me in utter contempt. And then, by all means, detail how I, your supposedly idiotic fiancé, overheard your delightful commentary and subsequently used your openly and carelessly shared professional contacts to help my genuinely talented, hardworking, and, incidentally, very broke cousin get a much-deserved foot in the door. A cousin who, unlike you, possesses a modicum of integrity and an actual work ethic. For your information, I have meticulously saved screenshots of your, shall we say, less than flattering commentary about me, not to mention Tiffany's rather illuminating text message exposing your current manipulative charade. I also possess detailed financial records of every single penny Irene earned from those gigs and every single penny I received as my legitimately earned 50% finder's fee. All perfectly legal and above board, I assure you. You, on the other hand, darling, have a burgeoning reputation in certain circles for being, well, let's just say high maintenance and ungrateful are some of the kinder terms I've heard whispered. So please proceed. Proceed. Let's see whose narrative the Austin and Dallas creative communities find more credible. Or, and this is just a thought, you could perhaps consider accepting that this particular chapter of your life is definitively closed and attempt, for the first time, to build a future based on something other than deceit and the exploitation of others. The choice, as they say, is yours. P.S. I found your Chanel boots. They're with Goodwill now. Hope they find a deserving owner. The silence from that number was immediate and, I have to say, profoundly satisfying. She didn't reply. I suppose even Bella, in her cocoon of self-delusion, could recognize the unmistakable scent of a catastrophically lost battle when her bluff was called with such overwhelming and well-documented force. The feeling of empowerment was no longer just a concept, it was a palpable, invigorating current coursing through me. I was no longer her victim, no longer a pawn in her game. I was the one holding all the cards. Several weeks passed. I was slowly, methodically, reclaiming my life in my apartment. I'd even started therapy, determined to understand the psychological dynamics that had made me susceptible to Bella's particular brand of poison. My therapist introduced me to concepts like gray rocking, a technique for dealing with narcissists by becoming as unresponsive and uninteresting as a gray rock, and it resonated deeply. Maya, now officially Irene, was flourishing, her face appearing on more and more local billboards and in magazine spreads. Her father, Uncle Ray, had even called me, a development that nearly made me drop my phone, to gruffly thank me for believing in that stubborn girl of his when he hadn't. Life was, for the first time in a long while, feeling calm. Then, one Thursday evening, I was at a gallery opening in East Austin with Dave, trying to feign an interest in abstract metal sculptures. Suddenly, a familiar, perfectly modulated voice cut through the polite chatter. "Alex! Fancy meeting you here." My blood pressure spiked. It was Bella. She looked, as always, like $1 million, dressed in a slinky black dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. She was with a new guy, older, portlier, with a very expensive watch and an air of smug self-importance. Her new provider, no doubt. "Bella," I said, my voice carefully neutral, my expression deliberately bland. I was channeling my inner gray rock. "Alex, darling, I want you to meet Richard," she said, gesturing towards her companion with a proprietary air. "Richard, this is Alex, an old acquaintance." Acquaintance. Richard gave me a cursory nod, his eyes already scanning the room for someone more important. "Richard has been so supportive of my modeling career," Bella gushed, her eyes, however, fixed on me, searching for a reaction. "He really understands the industry, unlike some people." A deliberate, unsubtle dig. "That's nice," I said, my voice monotone. I offered no further engagement, no flicker of jealousy, no hint of resentment. Dave, bless his heart, looked like he was about to spontaneously combust with suppressed laughter beside me. Bella's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. This wasn't the reaction she wanted. She wanted drama, a scene, some acknowledgement of her power over me. "Yes, well," she continued, a brittle edge to her voice, "some of us know how to appreciate true beauty and talent. Richard is even thinking of investing in a new photography studio for me." "Cool," I said, then turned to Dave. Did you see that piece over there? The one that looks like a melted toaster? Fascinating. Bella's face flushed. She was losing control of the narrative, and she hated it. She opened her mouth to say something else, probably something even more pointed, but Richard, looking bored, tugged at her arm. Come on, darling, they're serving the good champagne over by the installation. She shot me one last venomous glare, then allowed herself to be led away. Dave waited until they were out of earshot before bursting into laughter. Dude, that was masterful, the gray rock. She looked like she was about to short-circuit. You didn't give her anything. I grinned, a genuine light-hearted grin. Learned it in therapy, I said. Turns out the best way to deal with a narcissist is to make yourself incredibly boring to them. It's been nearly 2 years since Bella dramatically exited my life. I haven't heard from her directly since the failed blackmail attempt. Occasionally I'll see a paparazzi photo of her clinging to some new wealthy-looking man on a celebrity gossip site Dave forwards me with the caption, "Your ex is at it again, lol." Each time I feel nothing but a distant, detached pity for her next victim. Irene is now a bona fide international model. She's walked in Paris Fashion Week, graced the cover of several prestigious magazines, and is the face of a major cosmetics brand. She still insists on sending me a consulting fee whenever a significant opportunity arises from a contact that ultimately originated from Bella's old list, though I've told her countless times it's no longer necessary. It's become our private joke, a symbol of our shared victory. Her father, Uncle Ray, now proudly displays her magazine covers in his corporate office in Houston. He even invested in a small photography studio, not for Bella, but as a joint venture with Irene to support young, up-and-coming Texas talent. The irony is not lost on me. My therapy journey has been transformative. I understand now, with painful clarity, how my own deep-seated insecurities, my yearning for validation from someone I perceived as out of my league, and my innate desire to be a good guy provider made me a perfect target for Bella's narcissistic machinations. I've learned about the insidious nature of codependency, the subtle erosion of self caused by constant gaslighting, and the profound strength it takes to rebuild after a trauma bond has been severed. Most importantly, I've learned the critical importance of establishing and fiercely defending healthy boundaries. I'm dating again, slowly, cautiously. But this time I'm looking for different things: kindness, reciprocity, emotional intelligence, and a shared sense of humor that doesn't come at someone else's expense. I'm no longer attracted to the superficial gloss, but to the genuine substance beneath. Sometimes, late at night, when I'm working on a particularly complex piece of code, I'll think back to that moment in the kitchen, the rage and betrayal coiling in my gut. And I'll wonder if I could have handled it differently, if the elaborate revenge was truly necessary. Maybe, maybe not. But then I remember the cold, calculating contempt in Bella's voice as she mocked me to her friends, the utter lack of empathy, the years of my life she was prepared to consume without a second thought. And I know, with a certainty that settles deep in my bones, that she didn't just break my heart, she tried to break my spirit. My revenge wasn't just about getting even, it was about reclaiming my power, my dignity, and my future. She thought she was the puppet master, pulling my strings. She never realized I was the one quietly, methodically, rewriting the entire play, and in the final act her clueless provider took his bow, leaving her alone on an empty stage. And honestly, the applause from my own self-respect was the only standing ovation I ever needed. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, go ahead and give it a like. It really helps me out. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks a bunch!